Jack Morrison barely makes ends meet, working multiple jobs to provide for himself in Minnesota. One freezing winter morning, while jogging along the Mississippi River, he spots something that makes his heart stop. A disabled boy struggling in the icy water. Without thinking twice, Jack jumps in. The bone-chilling current threatens to pull them both under, but Jack refuses to let go. He doesn't know that watching from her car is Katherine Wells, a billionaire who's kept herself and her son hidden from the world. After years of pushing people away, she's moved by this stranger's selfless act of courage. As she watches Jack fight against the freezing water to save her only child, something changes in her heart. But can a woman who has everything find happiness with a man who has nothing but his integrity? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m., same as every morning. Jack Morrison's hand found the worn running shoes beside his bed before his eyes even opened. They were second-hand Nike Zooms he'd found at Goodwill 3 months ago. The only luxury he allowed himself these days. His small apartment creaked with familiar sounds as he moved through his pre-dawn routine. The coffee maker sputtered to life, its heating element struggling against Minnesota's winter chill that seeped through poorly insulated walls. Jack pulled on his layered running gear, thermal underwear from last year's Christmas sale, a faded University of Minnesota sweatshirt, and the thick wool hat his mother had knitted before she passed. The kitchen counter held the usual stack of bills: electric, past due; rent, due next week; credit card minimum payment, barely manageable. Next to them sat a framed contractor's license, collecting dust. 5 years ago, Morrison Construction had been a rising star in Minneapolis's renovation scene. Now, it was just another casualty of the economic downturn, leaving Jack with nothing but debt and determination. He poured his coffee into a battered thermos, the same one he'd take to his first job at the warehouse at 7 a.m. Then the afternoon shift at the hardware store, where he tried not to think about the projects he used to run. Evening security work at the mall rounded out his 18-hour days. But these pre-dawn hours, these were his. The Mississippi River Trail had become his sanctuary over the past year. Even in winter, when the water turned slate gray and ice formed along the banks, Jack found peace in his 5-mile route. The steady rhythm of his footfalls, the crisp air burning his lungs, the gradual lightening of the sky. It was the only time he felt truly free. This morning was colder than usual. His breath formed thick clouds in the beam of his headlamp as he made his way down to the riverside path. The previous night's weather report had warned of record-low temperatures, and the river showed it. Sheets of ice stretched further from the banks than he'd seen all winter, and the current moved sluggishly between them. Jack checked his old Timex, 5:15 a.m. The sun wouldn't rise for another 2 hours, but he could already see signs of the city stirring. Across the river, lights were coming on in the expensive riverside homes. Range Rovers and BMWs would soon emerge from heated garages, carrying their owners to high-rise offices downtown. Sometimes he imagined his life if things had gone differently. If he'd known the housing market was about to crash, if he hadn't taken out that last business loan, if he'd listened to his accountant's warnings. But regret was a luxury he couldn't afford, not with 3 jobs and a mountain of debt to climb. He picked up his pace, feet sure on the familiar path despite the darkness. The cold air numbed his face, but his body was warm now, muscles working smoothly as he rounded the bend toward Stone Arch Bridge. His watch showed 5:47 a.m. when he first heard it, a sound so out of place that he almost missed it. A splash, followed by something between a gasp and a cry. Jack slowed, turning his headlamp toward the water. The beam caught something in the current, something that shouldn't be there, something moving. In the fraction of a second before his body acted, Jack's mind registered several things at once. The dark shape struggling against the current, the wheelchair tipped over on the bank above, and a black luxury SUV parked near the river's edge, its driver's door hanging open. 10 minutes earlier, Katherine Wells sat in her custom Range Rover, watching her son through the pre-dawn darkness. Tommy had begged to see the river before his physical therapy appointment. "Just 5 minutes, Mom," he'd pleaded, those brown eyes so much like his father's. She never could resist when he looked at her that way. The Wells estate stretched across 20 acres of Minneapolis's most exclusive riverfront property, but Tommy always preferred this humble viewing spot near Stone Arch Bridge. His custom titanium wheelchair, a marvel of engineering that cost more than most cars, stood perfectly still at the river's edge. Katherine checked her Cartier watch. They had exactly 18 minutes before they needed to leave for his appointment. "The ice is different today," Tommy called out, his voice carrying the slight slur that remained after years of speech therapy. At 12, he understood more about river conditions than most adults. Katherine smiled, remembering the environmental science tutor she'd hired last summer when Tommy became obsessed with water patterns. She pulled her cashmere wrap tighter, watching him from the warmth of the car. This was their morning ritual, Tommy studying his beloved river while Katherine studied him, cataloguing every movement, every breath, every smile. After losing him twice to cardiac arrests in his early years, she'd learned to treasure each moment. The corporate board of Wells Technologies thought she was overprotective. "Tommy needs to attend regular school," they'd argued at the last quarterly meeting. "The public needs to see the Wells heir living a normal life." But Katherine hadn't built a tech empire worth billions by letting others dictate her choices. Tommy's health and happiness were the only things that mattered. Her phone buzzed, probably another message from the board about the upcoming shareholders' meeting. Katherine ignored it, focusing instead on her son's silhouette against the lightening sky. The river had always been his fascination, ever. Since they'd moved to Minneapolis after Michael's death, the doctors said Tommy's disability would limit his interests, but they'd been wrong about that, just as they'd been wrong about his life expectancy. Something caught her eye. Tommy's wheelchair was moving closer to the edge. "Sweetheart," she called out, opening her door. "That's close enough." But Tommy was absorbed in whatever he'd spotted in the water. His upper body leaned forward, straining against the safety belt she insisted he always wear. Katherine's heart rate quickened as she stepped out of the car. "Mom, there's something caught in the ice." Tommy's excitement made him rock forward again. Katherine was already moving, her Jimmy Choos completely impractical on the frozen ground when she saw it happen in horrible slow motion. The wheelchairs. Front wheels found a patch of black ice. Tommy's weight, shifted forward in excitement, was just enough to tip the balance. Katherine screamed his name as the chair toppled, sending her son headfirst down the rocky bank. She ran, stumbling on her heels, watching helplessly as Tommy hit the water. The current grabbed him immediately, pulling him away from the bank. His red winter coat bloomed like a flower against the grey water. "Tommy!" The sound that tore from her throat was primal, animal. She was scrambling down the bank, designer clothes catching on frozen rocks when she saw movement on the path. A runner, his headlamp cutting through the darkness, was already moving toward the water. Katherine's world narrowed to 2 points of light. Her son's red coat moving downstream and the stranger's headlamp growing closer to it. She'd hired the best security team in the country, installed state-of-the-art surveillance systems around their home, only to find herself powerless now, watching a random jogger become Tommy's only hope. The man didn't hesitate. He shed his outer layer in one smooth motion and dove into the current. Katherine's hands flew to her mouth, her entire body trembling as she watched him swim toward the increasingly distant splash of red. The river's current was notorious, especially in winter. She'd read every article, studied every warning sign along their property, all part of her endless quest to protect Tommy, but she hadn't protected him. And now 2 lives hung in the balance because of her failure. The shock of the water drove the air from Jack's lungs. Even through his thermal layers, the cold hit like concrete, turning his muscles to wood. Training from his high school lifeguarding days kicked in, controlled the breathing, Maintain forward motion. Keep the target in sight. The redcoat was moving faster now, caught in the river's main current. Jack could hear screaming from the bank, but it seemed distant, unimportant. His world narrowed to the space between himself and the struggling child. Stroke. Breathe. Stroke. The current tugged at his legs, trying to pull him under. Tommy's head disappeared beneath the surface, then bobbed up again. The heavy winter coat was working against him now, waterlogged and dragging him down. Jack pushed harder, his shoulders burning with effort. The gap was closing, but not fast enough. "Hold on!" Jack shouted between strokes. "I'm coming! Just hold on!" On the bank, Katherine ran parallel to the current, her designer shoes long. Abandoned on the frozen ground. Her phone was in her hand, 911 dispatcher's voice tinny and far away. "Emergency services are en route, ma'am. Please stay on the line." The stranger was gaining on Tommy, but the river was pulling them both toward the rapids near the bridge support. Katherine knew those rapids. She'd read every warning sign, studied every river safety bulletin. No one survived them in winter. "Please," she whispered, no longer sure who she was begging. "Please." Jack's fingers brushed the red coat, then slipped off. The cold was seeping deeper now, making his movements sluggish. The boy's struggles were weakening, hypothermia setting in fast. Jack made one final lunge, wrapping his arm around the child's chest. "I've got you," he gasped. "I've got you, buddy. Stay with me." Tommy's eyes were wide with terror, his lips blue. Jack tucked the boy's head against his shoulder, turning them both toward the bank. The current fought him every inch, threatening to tear Tommy from his grasp. Each stroke felt like moving through mud. Katherine saw them change direction, saw the stranger's powerful kicks fighting the current, but they were still being pulled downstream, the rapids growing closer. She ran faster, no longer feeling the frozen ground cutting her feet. "There's a rescue line under the bridge," she screamed. "Emergency box on the pillar." Jack heard her through the rushing water. The bridge was 30 yards downstream. They'd hit the rapids before they could reach it. He needed another option. His lifeguard training flashed through his mind. When fighting a current, don't fight the current. Use it. He adjusted his grip on Tommy, feeling the boy's trembling body against his chest. "Hold your breath when I say," he managed through chattering teeth. "We're going to dive." Tommy gave a tiny nod, understanding despite his terror. Jack waited for the current to align them with a gap in the ice near the bank, where the water swirled in a slower eddy. Now! They submerged. The cold was total, absolute. Jack kicked hard, using the current's momentum to slingshot them toward the eddy. His lungs screamed. Tommy clutched his neck with weakening arms. The world went dark at the edges. Then they surfaced in the calm water just feet from the bank. Jack's legs found rocky bottom. He lifted Tommy higher, gasping as a wave of dizziness hit him. Strong hands reached down from above. Emergency responders, already setting up ropes and pulleys. "Take him first," Jack managed, pushing Tommy toward the waiting arms. The boy was lifted away, immediately wrapped in silver emergency blankets. Jack watched through blurring vision as Katherine ran to her son, her cries of relief echoing under the bridge. His job done, Jack let himself feel the cold. It had settled into his bones, making even the simplest movement a battle. The rescue team was calling to him, dropping lines, but his arms wouldn't respond. The current pulled at his legs. "Sir, take the rope." He tried to grip it, but his fingers were numb clubs. The darkness at the edges of his vision spread inward. The last thing he saw was Tommy, blanket-wrapped and safe, watching him with huge brown eyes as Katherine held him close. Then the cold took him, and everything went black. He awoke to chaos, voices shouting, hands pulling him onto hard ground, someone cutting away his frozen clothes, an oxygen mask pressed against his face. Through the commotion, he heard a child's voice, weak but insistent. "Is he okay? Mom, please, is he okay? BP's dropping. Get him in the bus now." The world shifted and swayed as they lifted him onto a stretcher. Katherine watched them load both Jack and Tommy into separate ambulances, her heart split between gratitude and guilt. Her son was alive because this stranger had risked everything. Now he might die because of it. She found his discarded jacket. On the bank, a simple, worn thing with a lifeguard certification patch sewn onto the sleeve. In the pocket was an old pocket watch, stopped at exactly 5:47 a.m., the moment he jumped into the river to save her son. Minneapolis General's emergency room buzzed with controlled chaos. Katherine sat beside Tommy's bed, her hand resting on his chest, feeling each precious breath. The doctors had assured her he would recover fully. His core temperature was already approaching normal, and his cardiac readings were stable. But she couldn't stop touching him, couldn't shake the image of his red coat disappearing beneath the ice. "Mom," Tommy whispered, his voice hoarse. "Where is he?" She knew who he meant. The stranger, the hero, was somewhere in the same hospital, being treated for severe hypothermia. She'd tried to get information, but privacy protocols stood firm, even against a Wells's inquiries. "He's being taken care of, sweetheart. Try to rest." But his coffee, Tommy's face creased with worry. "Mom, he dropped his thermos. He needs it for work." Katherine's throat tightened. Of course Tommy would think of that. Her compassionate boy, always worrying about others. She'd seen the battered thermos on the riverbank next to the man's discarded jacket. Such a small thing, but it had seemed important somehow, a glimpse into his daily life. A nurse entered, carrying a styrofoam cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Katherine had barely touched it, but she clung to it like a lifeline. The nurse checked Tommy's vitals, then hesitated. "Mrs. Wells, the man who rescued your son, he's stabilized. Room 204 if you'd like to know." Katherine nodded, unable to speak past the sudden lump in her throat. The nurse understood, patting her shoulder before leaving. "Go see him, Mom," Tommy urged. "Tell him thank you. Tell him I'm okay." She kissed his forehead, straightened his blankets. "I'll be right back. Promise you'll stay in bed." "Promise." Tommy's eyes were already drooping with exhaustion, but he managed a small smile. "Tell him he's my hero." Katherine's heels clicked softly on the linoleum as she made her way to room 204. Through the window she saw him, pale but breathing steadily, an IV dripping warm fluids into his arm. A doctor was reviewing his chart. "Full recovery expected," the doctor was saying to someone inside, "but he'll need rest, at least a week off work." "A week?" The voice was rough, worried. I have shifts, bills." Katherine stepped back, her heart clenching. This man had nearly died saving Tommy, and he was worried about missing work. She thought of the worn thermos, the patched jacket, the ancient pocket watch now safely tucked in her purse. A nurse hurried past, carrying a fresh hospital coffee in a paper cup, the same nurse from earlier. She caught Katherine's eye, nodded toward room 204 with a knowing look. Katherine understood. The nurse had been bringing him coffee every hour, trying to help him warm up. Back in Tommy's room, Katherine made a call. Her assistant answered, on the first ring despite the early hour. "Sarah, I need you to handle something personally. Minneapolis General, room 204. There's a man being treated for hypothermia. I need his employment information, all of it, and have accounting prepare." "A transfer? No, wait." She paused, remembering his face when the doctor mentioned taking time off. This man had his pride. "Just the employment details for now. And Sarah, complete discretion on this." Tommy stirred as she ended the call. "Is he okay?" Katherine smoothed his hair back, remembering how the stranger had tucked Tommy's head against his shoulder in the water, protecting him even as they both nearly drowned. "He's going to be fine, sweetheart. We'll make sure of it." Outside the hospital windows, the sun was finally rising over the Mississippi. The same river that had nearly taken everything from her now flowed peacefully, unaware of how it had just changed so many lives. In the soft morning light, Katherine could see ambulance tracks in the fresh snow, coffee cups abandoned by emergency workers, and a single set of running shoe prints leading to the water's edge. She touched the pocket, watch in her purse, its hands forever marking the moment a stranger had become something more. 3 days after the rescue, Jack stood before his bathroom mirror, studying the dark circles under his eyes. The hospital had discharged him yesterday with strict instructions to rest for a week. Instead, he was knotting his tie for the warehouse shift, trying to ignore how his hands still trembled from the cold that seemed lodged in his bones. The morning newspaper lay on his kitchen counter, folded to hide the headline, "Local hero risks life to save disabled child." Someone at the UIDU hospital had tipped off the press. The story mentioned neither Tommy's name nor Katherine's, just a local mother, but it painted Jack as some kind of superhero. The truth was simpler. He'd just done what anyone would do. His phone buzzed again, another reporter seeking comment. He'd already missed 2 shifts at the warehouse, 1 at the hardware store. The mall had been understanding about the security job at least, but understanding didn't pay bills. He grabbed his spare thermos, the old one lost to the river, and headed out. The morning air bit at his face, colder than ever, but he couldn't afford a taxi. As he waited for the bus, a sleek black SUV rolled past, slowing slightly. Jack caught a glimpse of tinted windows before it accelerated away. At the warehouse, his supervisor, Mike, was waiting. "Morrison, what the hell are you doing here?" "I'm fine, Mike. Doctor cleared me." The lie came easily. What was a little more debt to the hospital when he was already drowning in it? Mike crossed his arms. "Funny, because I got a call from your doctor's office this morning. Strictly confidential medical leave, they said. Fully paid, paperwork already processed." Jack stared. "That's impossible. I don't have that kind of coverage. Above my pay grade, man. But you can't work while you're on medical leave. Liability issues. See you next week." Mike's expression softened. "Get some rest, hero." The same scene repeated at the hardware store. Paid medical leave. Paperwork in order, no arguments accepted. Jack stood on the sidewalk outside, wondering if he was still delirious from hypothermia. His phone buzzed. An unknown number, probably another reporter. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "Mr. Morrison?" A crisp, professional voice. "I'm calling from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. We're running a feature on your rescue of Tommy Wells, son of Katherine Wells, CEO of Wells Technologies." Jack's world tilted. Wells Technologies, the tech giant worth billions. The pieces clicked. The black SUV, the mysterious medical leave, the privacy at the hospital. "No comment," he managed, ending the call. Across town, Katherine sat in her home office, monitoring Jack's situation through discreet channels. Tommy was asleep upstairs, finally recovered enough to return home. She touched the pocket watch on her desk, its hands still frozen at the moment of rescue. "Mrs. Wells?" Her assistant Sarah appeared in the doorway. "The Tribune is running the story tomorrow, despite our requests. They've identified Tommy." Katherine nodded. She'd known it would happen eventually. "And Mr. Morrison, he's refusing interviews, and—" Sarah hesitated. "He tried to decline the medical leave arrangements, said he couldn't accept charity." Of course he had. Katherine had seen it in him from the start, that same pride she carried, the need to stand on one's own feet. But she owed him everything. Her son's life was worth more than pride. Tommy's voice drifted down the hallway as he woke, calling for her. Before she went to him, Katherine made a decision. Opening her desk drawer, she took out the worn pocket watch, wrapping it carefully in tissue paper. It was time to return what was his, and perhaps find a way to give him what he'd earned, without wounding his pride. "Sarah, arrange a car for tomorrow morning, early, before the media circus begins. I need to pay someone a visit." The knock came at 6:45 a.m. Jack was already awake, sitting at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee, reading yet another article about the rescue. He opened the door to find Katherine Wells standing in his hallway, looking both elegant and somehow vulnerable in a simple wool coat. "Mr. Morrison." Her voice was softer than he'd expected. "May I come in?" Jack hesitated, acutely aware of his shabby apartment, the water stain on the ceiling, the mismatched furniture. But there was something in her eyes, not pity, but a deep raw gratitude that made him step aside. Coffee? He offered, falling back on basic hospitality. Please. She remained standing, taking in the contractor's license on his wall, the stack of bills he hadn't managed to hide. I brought something that belongs to you. She withdrew a tissue-wrapped package from her purse. Jack knew what it was before. She unwrapped it, his grandfather's pocket watch, the one he'd thought lost to the river. Tommy wanted to clean it for you, she said, handling it with unexpected gentleness. But I thought some things should stay as they are, as reminders. Jack took the watch, its familiar weight grounding him. How is he? Better, asking about you constantly. She smiled, and for a moment she wasn't Katherine Wells, CEO of a tech empire, but simply a mother. He made you this, she pulled out, a hand-drawn card covered in wobbly letters and a crayon drawing of two figures by a blue river. The smaller figure was in a wheelchair. The larger one wore what looked like a superhero cape. I'm not a hero, Jack said quietly, but he held the card carefully as if it were made of gold. You jumped into a frozen river to save my son. Katherine accepted the coffee he offered, wrapping her manicured hands around the chipped mug. The word hero seems inadequate. Anyone would have... No, her voice was firm. They wouldn't have. Believe me. I've seen enough of humanity to know the difference. She paused, sipping the coffee. This is good. Food service job in college. Learn to make decent coffee. A small smile touched her lips. Another skill to add to the list, along with construction, lifeguarding, and apparently superhero work. The attempt at humor surprised him. He found himself smiling back, then caught himself. This woman had paid for his medical leave, probably knew everything about his financial situation. Mrs. Wells, Katherine, please. Katherine, I appreciate everything you've done, but I can't accept the medical leave. She set down her mug. Consider it a business transaction. You provided an invaluable service to Wells Technologies, the preservation of its CEO's mental health and her son's life. The company is simply providing appropriate compensation. That's not... My son wants to see you, she interrupted. He has questions only you can answer, about the river, about what it felt like. His therapist thinks talking about it would help. She met his eyes directly. Have dinner with us. Let him thank you properly. After that, if you never want to hear from us again, I'll respect that. Jack looked down at the crayon drawing. The carefully printed thank you in a child's hand. He thought of the boy's voice in the river, the trust in his eyes, even as the cold tried to claim them both. One dinner? Katherine nodded, relief flickering across her face. Tomorrow, I'll send a car. I can drive myself. At her raised eyebrow, he added, if you give me the address. She wrote it on the back of one of his unopened bills, her elegant script a stark contrast to the red past due stamp. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. The medical leave isn't charity, Mr. Morrison. It's barely the beginning of what I owe you. Her voice caught slightly. When I saw him go into that water... Katherine, Jack surprised himself by touching her arm. He's safe. That's all that matters. She covered his hand with hers for a moment, a gesture of simple human connection that transcended their different worlds. Then she was gone, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume, a child's crayon thank you, and the sense that Jack's carefully ordered life was about to change dramatically. Jack's ancient pickup truck looked absurdly out of place in the circular driveway of the Wells estate. He sat for a moment, taking in the elegant facade, manicured grounds, and what appeared to be a security booth, discreetly positioned near the gate. The guard had waved him through immediately. They'd been expecting him. Before he could reach for the door, it swung open. Tommy sat in his wheelchair, practically vibrating with excitement. "You came! Mom, he's here!" Katherine appeared. Behind her son, one hand resting protectively on his shoulder. She'd dressed down for the evening in simple slacks and a sweater, but Jack suspected her casual outfit cost more than his monthly rent. "Right on time," she smiled. "Tommy's been watching the driveway for an hour. Had to make sure my biggest fan wasn't disappointed." Jack crouched down to Tommy's level, pulling something from his jacket. I brought you something." It was his old lifeguard certification card, laminated and worn. Tommy took it with reverent hands. "Really? For me? Figure you might want proof your hero is actually qualified for water rescue." Tommy clutched the card to his chest, then wheeled himself around. "Come see my room. I have all the newspaper articles about you on my wall." "Tommy," Katherine cautioned, "Mr. Morrison might want to—" "It's Jack," he interrupted gently. "And I'd love to see your room, buddy." As they followed Tommy down a hallway lined with original artwork, Katherine watched Jack take everything in without comment. No awkward compliments about the house, no visible discomfort at the obvious wealth. Just quiet attention to Tommy's excited chatter about river conditions and rescue techniques. Tommy's room was a surprise. No typical preteen posters or gaming systems. Instead, the walls held detailed maps of the Mississippi River system, scientific diagrams of water flow patterns, and yes, a carefully arranged collection of newspaper clippings about the rescue. "I'm building a model," Tommy announced, pointing to his desk where a topographical map of the river was taking shape in clay and blue resin, to show how the currents work where it happened. Jack studied the model. "You've got the Eddie marked exactly right. That's what helped us get to shore, you know." Tommy's eyes lit up. "Really? Mom, can Jack help me finish the model? He knows how the water moves." Katherine watched them bend over the desk, Jack pointing out details while Tommy made quick, excited adjustments. Something in her chest tightened at how naturally they worked together, how her usually reserved son opened up completely to this stranger who'd become so much more. "Dinner's ready whenever you are," she said softly, not wanting to break the moment. Over the meal, a simple pasta dish Katherine had prepared herself, dismissing the cook for the evening, Tommy barely touched his food, too busy asking Jack questions. Had he been scared? Did he swim in winter often? Could he teach Tommy about water safety? "Sweetheart, let Jack eat," Katherine finally intervened, but Jack shook his head. "It's good to talk about it," he said, echoing her words from yesterday about the therapist. "Helps make it less scary, right, Tommy?" Tommy nodded, pushing his wheelchair back slightly. Mum was scared too. She cried a lot at the hospital. "Tommy!" Katherine flushed, but Jack met her eyes across the table. "I think everyone was scared that day," he said quietly. "Being scared just means we understand what matters most." After dinner, Tommy proudly showed Jack the adapted video game controller that let him play racing games despite his limited mobility. Katherine slipped away to the kitchen, needing a moment to compose herself. When she returned with coffee, she found them laughing over Tommy's impression of his physical therapist. "He's good with him," said a soft voice. Sarah, her assistant, had appeared silently as always. "The board won't like it." Katherine watched Jack teach Tommy a secret. Handshake saw her son's face glowing with happiness. "The board doesn't have to like it." She thought of the file on her desk, the one detailing Jack's struggle to save his construction business, his perfect payment history until the crash, his quiet dignity in working 3 jobs to pay back debts he could have easily escaped through. Bankruptcy. The board definitely wouldn't like what she was planning, but for the first time in years, Katherine found she didn't care. A week after the dinner, Katherine found herself standing in the hardware store's plumbing aisle, feeling decidedly out of her element. Jack's shift had started 10 minutes ago, but she hadn't worked up the courage to approach the counter where he was helping an elderly couple select pipe fittings. This wasn't her world. The fluorescent lights, the smell of lumber and fertilizer, the practical reality of people fixing their own homes. It all reminded her how far she'd drifted from normal life. She'd almost talked herself into leaving when Tommy wheeled himself around the corner. "Jack! Mum's pretending to look at toilet plungers." Katherine felt her face heat as Jack looked up, fighting the urge to straighten her cashmere coat. She hadn't planned on Tommy exposing her awkward reconnaissance quite so directly. "Toilet troubles at the mansion." Jack's eyes crinkled with amusement as he approached them. He was wearing a red store vest over flannel, an employee name tag clipped slightly crooked. "Tommy has a proposition for you," Katherine said with all the dignity she could muster. He insisted on delivering it in person. Tommy thrust a formally printed invitation toward Jack. "We're having a fundraiser for the children's ward at Minneapolis General, the one that helped me after, you know. Will you come, please?" Jack took the invitation, his expression carefully neutral as he noted the black-tie dress code and prestigious venue. "That's this Saturday. I have the security shift at the mall." "Already taken care of," Katherine interjected. "I hope you don't mind." Tommy was quite insistent. A shadow crossed Jack's face. "Katherine, you can't keep arranging my life." "Actually," Tommy piped up, "I called the mall. Said I needed my hero for an important hospital thing. The manager cried." It was kind of weird. The tension broke as Jack laughed despite himself. "Manipulated by a 12-year-old. That's a new one. I learned from Mom. She says proper preparation prevents poor performance." "Does she now?" Jack raised an eyebrow at Katherine, who suddenly found the plungers fascinating again. "I don't suppose," she said to the plungers. "You own a tuxedo." Surprisingly, formal wear wasn't a priority while paying off construction debt. "There's a tailor coming to the house tomorrow for Tommy's suit." Katherine finally looked at him. "He could measure you too. As a favor to Tommy, of course." Jack opened his mouth to refuse, but Tommy had already grabbed his hand. "Please. I'm doing a speech about the rescue, and I need you there. You're kind of the whole point." "Tommy," Katherine warned, "what did we say about pressure?" "Sorry." He didn't look sorry at all. "But Mom's been practicing her speech about you, too." Now it was Katherine's turn to flush. "Tommy!" Jack studied them both. The hopeful boy, the embarrassed CEO trying to hide behind a display of drain cleaners. His world of early shifts and careful budgeting seemed very far from charity galas and custom tuxedos. But Tommy's enthusiasm was hard to resist, and Katherine's obvious discomfort in the hardware store had somehow made her more approachable. "One condition," he said finally. "I drive myself." "Deal!" Tommy beamed. "Can you show me where you keep the power tools before we go?" As Jack led Tommy through the aisles, explaining the difference between impact drivers and regular drills, Katherine trailed behind. She watched them together, her son's eager questions, Jack's patient answers. The easy rapport between them made her heart ache in an unfamiliar way. "Mrs. Wells?" A store employee approached hesitantly. "There's a call from your office. Something about an emergency board meeting." Reality intruded. Katherine checked her phone. 5 missed calls from Sarah. The board must have gotten wind of Tommy's speech, of Jack's growing presence in their lives. "Tell them I'm in a meeting," she said, watching Tommy demonstrate his wheelchair's turning radius in the wide garden center aisle, while Jack applauded. A very important meeting. Later, as they were leaving, Tommy clutched a new set of precision screwdrivers, a gift from Jack for his river model. "Mom, can Jack teach me about tools for the model?" "If Jack has time," she hedged, but Jack was already pulling out his phone. "I've got Thursday afternoons off from the warehouse." He created a new contact, then hesitated before handing her his phone. "You know, in case Tommy has questions about the model." Katherine typed her private number, not her office line, not her assistant's number. As their fingers brushed during the phone exchange, she realized she'd completely forgotten about the board meeting. Some emergencies, she was learning, mattered more than others. The tailor had just left when Katherine found Jack standing in her study, staring at the wall of family photos. His new tuxedo measurements were safely recorded, though he'd refused to let her see the bill. Now he was focused on a particular image. Katherine, Tommy, and a tall man with Tommy's eyes, all smiling at some long-ago charity event. "Michael," Katherine said quietly, moving to stand beside him. "Tommy's father. The resemblance is strong." Jack's voice was careful, neutral. "He died when Tommy was 3. Private plane crash." She touched her bare ring finger, where the wedding band had left a phantom impression even years after she'd stopped wearing it. "He never knew about Tommy's condition. The symptoms started 6 months after we lost him." Jack turned to her. seeing past the CEO facade to the woman who'd faced it all alone. What happened? Rare genetic disorder. The doctor said. She swallowed hard. They said he wouldn't make it to 5, then 8, then 10. Each time they underestimated his strength. And mine. The study was growing dark, but neither moved to turn on the lights. Sometimes shadows made truth easier to speak. The business was Michael's originally, Katherine continued. When he died, the board thought I'd sell my shares, be a quiet widow. Instead, I took control, learned tech engineering at night while Tommy slept, built Wells Technologies into what it is today. She gave a small, fierce smile. They still underestimate me, like they underestimate Tommy. Exactly. She studied him. Your turn. The construction company. Jack's jaw tightened, but fair was fair. Built it from scratch after college. Had 12 employees, good contracts. Then 2008 hit. Housing market. Crashed, projects dried up. I'd just taken out a loan for new equipment. You couldn't have known. I should have. His voice was rough with old pain. My guys had families, mortgages. I liquidated everything, sold my house, paid them all their final wages. Bank still came after me for the equipment loan. But you didn't declare bankruptcy. Couldn't. Not after my dad. He shook his head. He walked away from his debts when I was a kid, left Mom to deal with the fallout. I swore I'd never do that. Katherine touched his arm lightly. That's why you work 3 jobs. Down to 2, and thanks to someone's meddling. But there was no anger in his voice, just weary acceptance. Should be clear in another year, if nothing else goes wrong. Unless someone offered to... Don't. His tone was gentle but firm. Please, let me do this my way. They stood in companionable silence, watching the last light fade over the river visible through the study windows. The same river that had nearly taken Tommy, that had brought them together. Tommy's speech, Katherine said suddenly, for the fundraiser. He wants to talk about second chances, how the river tried to take him but gave him something instead. Jack's throat tightened. Smart kid. He takes after his father that way. She hesitated. Michael would have liked you. High. Praise. The highest. She moved to her desk, opened a drawer. I've been wanting to show you something. Tommy made it the day after the rescue. It was a crayon drawing, carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve. 3 figures stood by a blue river, a small one in a wheelchair, a tall woman in business clothes, and a man with what looked like a red cape. Below, in Tommy's careful writing, "My new family." Jack stared at the picture, emotion making it hard to speak. Katherine watched him, understanding the weight of what she was sharing. He's never drawn Michael, she said softly. Says he can't remember him clearly enough, but he drew you the very next day. Katherine, Jack's voice was hoarse. I'm not asking for anything, she said quickly. I just thought you should know what you mean to him, to us. In the growing darkness, their eyes met. All the unspoken things, grief, loneliness, hope, hung in the air between them. Then Tommy's voice echoed down the hallway, calling for help with his river model, and the moment gently broke. But something had shifted, as surely as the river's current had that frozen morning. Something neither of them was quite ready to name. The fundraiser transformed the Minneapolis Grand Hotel's ballroom into a glittering wonderland. Tommy, resplendent in his new tuxedo, kept smoothing his tie nervously as he watched the crowd gather. Jack stood beside his wheelchair, looking surprisingly at ease in his own formal wear. You've got this, buddy, Jack assured him. Just like we practiced. Katherine approached, stunning in a midnight blue gown. She adjusted Tommy's tie with practiced hands. Remember, sweetheart, if it gets overwhelming, Jack will give the signal, and you'll make the migraine excuse to get me out, Tommy finished. I know, Mom, but I want to do this, for the other kids. Jack caught Katherine's eye over Tommy's head, sharing a moment of pride. In the week leading up to the gala, they'd spent every evening helping Tommy prepare his speech. Those quiet hours in Katherine's study had become something all 3 of them looked forward to, though none said it aloud. The event photographer approached, asking for a photo. Without thinking, Katherine and Jack moved to flank Tommy's wheelchair, their hands meeting naturally on its handles. The camera flashed. "Beautiful family shot," the photographer said, moving on before anyone could correct him. The silence that followed felt weighted with possibility. Tommy broke it by pulling out his phone, showing them his latest river model photos. The project had evolved beyond the rescue scene. Now he was mapping the entire Minneapolis section of the Mississippi, with Jack's hardware store tools allowing for precise detail work. "Mr. Morrison," a sharp voice interrupted their discussion. Harrison Wells, Katherine's cousin and head of the board, stood before them in an impeccably tailored tuxedo. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced." "Jack, this is Harrison," Katherine said, her tone cooling noticeably. "Harrison, Jack Morrison." "Ah, yes, the swimmer." Harrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Quite a splash you've made in our little family circle." "Uncle Harrison," Tommy interrupted, "Jack's teaching me about power tools. Did you know he used to build whole houses?" "Fascinating." Harrison's gaze swept over Jack's rented tuxedo. "And now he works at a hardware store. Life takes interesting turns, doesn't it?" Before Jack could respond, the event coordinator announced it was time for Tommy's speech. Katherine squeezed her son's shoulder. "Show time, sweetheart." Tommy wheeled himself to the stage, Jack and Katherine watching from the wings. As he began speaking about second chances and everyday heroes, Katherine slipped her hand into Jack's. "Ignore Harrison," she whispered. "He's been trying to gain control of the company since Michael died. He's protective of you," Jack murmured. "Back. Can't blame him for that." On stage, Tommy was describing the rescue. "The river was so cold I couldn't feel anything, but then these strong arms grabbed me and I heard a voice saying, 'I've got you, buddy.' And I knew, somehow, that everything would be okay." Katherine's hand tightened on Jack's. In the audience, even Harrison looked moved. "The doctors say I'll never walk," Tommy continued. "But that's okay, because I can still make a difference. The children's ward at Minneapolis General saved my life 3 times before I turned 10. Now it's my turn to help save other kids. With your help, we can make sure every child gets their second chance." The applause was thunderous. Tommy beamed as he wheeled himself back to them, accepting hugs from both Katherine and Jack. "That's my boy," Jack said proudly, then caught himself. "Yes," Katherine said softly, "he is." Later, after Tommy had charmed the donors and the pledges had exceeded all expectations, they found themselves on the hotel's riverside terrace. Tommy had fallen asleep in his wheelchair, emotionally exhausted but happy. "The board meeting's tomorrow," Katherine said, watching the moonlight on the water. "They're concerned about public image, about how it looks having you in our lives." "Katherine, I don't care." Her voice was strong, certain. "Tommy's drawing, the one of our family. I had it framed. It's going up in my office tomorrow, right before the meeting." Jack touched the back of her hand where it rested on the terrace railing. "You're starting a war." "No." She turned to him, moonlight catching the tears in her eyes. "I'm ending one. The war between what the board wants and what Tommy needs. What I need." Below them, the river flowed on, its current strong and sure, like the path they'd found themselves on, Jack thought. Unstoppable once you stopped fighting it. "Then we'll face it together," he said simply, and felt Katherine's fingers intertwine with his own. The storm hit Minneapolis without warning. Weather reports had predicted light snow, but what came instead was a vicious mix of ice and wind that brought the city to a standstill. Jack was at the hardware store when the power first went out, helping panic buyers find flashlights and batteries. His phone buzzed, Katherine's private number. His heart jumped, as it always did when she called. "Jack?" Her voice was tight with worry. "Tommy's having an episode. His oxygen levels are dropping, and the backup generator for his breathing machine isn't working properly. I can't reach the regular maintenance team." He was already grabbing his tools. "I'm on my way. The roads. I've got snow chains. 20 minutes tops." The normally 15-minute drive took nearly 40, even with the chains. Jack's ancient truck fought through wind-swept drifts, wipers barely keeping up with the ice. He kept thinking about Tommy's face when he'd taught him about circuit boards last week, the way the boy's eyes lit up with understanding. Katherine met him at the door, her usual poise shaken. He's in his room, the generator's in the basement. Jack could hear Tommy's labored breathing from the hallway. The boy managed a weak smile when he saw him. "Hey, hero, save your breath, buddy. We'll have you fixed up in no time." The backup generator was a top-of-the-line model, but something was interfering with its connection to Tommy's medical equipment. Jack traced the wiring through the walls, remembering similar systems he'd installed in luxury homes during his construction days. "Here," he pointed to a junction box. "Ice has gotten into the external housing, shorting the circuit. We need to reroute through the secondary system." Katherine held a flashlight while he worked, her presence steady despite her fear. Outside, the storm raged louder, rattling windows and hurling ice against the walls. "Board meeting didn't go well," she said quietly, trying to distract herself. "That obvious?" Harrison showed them Tommy's drawing, called it evidence of emotional manipulation by an opportunistic fortune hunter. Jack's hands stilled for a moment. "And what did you say?" "I reminded them that Wells Technology's success came from recognizing value in unexpected places." Her voice hardened. "And that if they tried to interfere with my personal life, I'd take Tommy and my controlling shares to our biggest competitor." A spark from the wiring made them both jump. Jack adjusted something, and the reassuring hum of power returned. "Should work now," he said, gathering his tools. "Let's check on—" A tremendous crash from upstairs. "Cut him off!" They raced to Tommy's room to find a massive tree branch had smashed through his window, letting in a blast of freezing air and ice. Tommy's breathing machine was beeping frantically. "Get him to the study," Jack ordered, already moving to shield them from the glass. "I'll seal this off." Katherine tried to wheel Tommy out, but the chair's battery had died during the power outage. Without hesitation, Jack scooped Tommy into his arms, equipment and all. "Just like the river," Tommy wheezed. Against his shoulder. "You've got me, buddy." Jack's throat tightened. "Always." The study was warm, powered by the restored generator. They settled Tommy on the leather couch while Jack ran back for spare blankets and emergency supplies. When he returned, Katherine was holding her son's hand, whispering the soft reassurances of mothers everywhere. "Storm's getting worse," Jack said, checking Tommy's oxygen levels. "Roads will be impassable soon." "Stay," Katherine said immediately. "Please." Tommy's breathing was easier now, but his color was still off. Jack knew the signs of an impending cardiac event from his research after the rescue. "He needs monitoring. Overnight. I'll call Dr. Mason." "Mum," Tommy interrupted weakly, "want Jack to stay." They locked eyes over Tommy's head, acknowledging what they'd both felt building since that first day at the river. This wasn't just about the storm anymore. "I'll get more wood for the fireplace," Jack said softly. When he returned, Tommy had fallen into an exhausted sleep, his breathing finally steady. Katherine stood by the window, watching ice coat the riverbank where everything had started. "Harrison was right about one thing," she said without turning. "You did change our lives, Katherine, but he was wrong about why." Now she faced him, her eyes bright in the firelight. "You never asked for anything, never wanted anything, except to help." "That's not entirely true." Jack set down the firewood. "I wanted to be part of his life, part of yours." She crossed the room to him, her bare feet silent on the carpet. Outside, the storm howled, but in here was warmth and truth, and the sleeping boy who had brought them together. "The board can't fight this," she whispered. "They can't fight family." Jack brushed a tear from her cheek. "Is that what we are?" Instead of answering, Katherine kissed him. It was gentle, questioning at first, then deeper as months of unspoken feelings surfaced. When they finally parted, Tommy's voice made them both start. "About time," he mumbled, eyes still closed. "Can we get a dog now?" The photo hit social media 3 days after the storm. Katherine Wells, CEO of Wells Technologies, kissing a hardware store employee in her study. The timestamp showed 2 a.m. By breakfast, it was trending nationwide. Wells Tech IRS in midnight. Tryst with rescue hero. Cinderella story, from hardware store to Wells mansion. Sources reveal Wells board members deeply concerned about CEO's new romance. Jack saw the headlines at work, displayed on customers' phones as they whispered and pointed. He kept his head down, focusing on inventory sheets, until Mike pulled him aside. "Go home, Morrison. Media vultures are circling the parking lot." Through the store window, Jack could see the news vans gathering. His phone buzzed with another, and text from Katherine. "Harrison's assistant leaked the security footage. I'm so sorry." Tommy had been kept home from his therapy appointment after reporters crowded the hospital entrance. His latest text was simpler. "They're ruining everything." Jack's hands clenched on the inventory clipboard. He'd known this was coming, had seen it building since the fundraiser, but the reality was worse than he'd imagined. Sarah, Katherine's assistant, arrived through the store's back entrance. "Mrs. Wells sent me. There's a car waiting." "I'm not hiding," Jack said firmly. "No," Sarah agreed, her usually professional demeanor softening. "You're protecting Tommy. The press is camped. Outside his physical therapy center, his favorite river spot, even his tutor's house. He's scared." That got Jack moving. In the car, Sarah showed him more headlines on her tablet. "Wells ears health crisis during storm. Handyman to the rescue again." Exclusive, Wells Technologies board member speaks out against dangerous. Liaison. Katherine Wells' secret past. The tragic death of Tommy's father. The Wells estate was surrounded by photographers. Security guided them through a back entrance, where they found Katherine in her study, commanding what looked like a war room of PR professionals. "Out," she ordered when she saw Jack. The team filed away, leaving them alone. "I never wanted this for you," she said quietly, "for either of you. Katherine, they're digging into your bankruptcy, the construction company, everything." Her voice shook slightly. "Harrison's behind it. He's trying to paint you as a fortune hunter to force me out. Let them dig." Jack took her hands. "I've got nothing to hide, but Tommy is stronger than anyone knows." Jack nodded toward the doorway where Tommy had appeared in his wheelchair. "The reporters are saying Jack only saved me to get close." "To you," Tommy said, wheeling himself in. "That's stupid. He didn't even know who we were." Katherine knelt beside her son. "I know, sweetheart. People sometimes—" "No." Tommy's voice was firm. "You're letting them win. Both of you. Jack, show her." Jack pulled out his phone, opening his work email. "I wasn't going to mention this, but the hardware store's regional manager called. They want to promote me to district supervisor. Said all the publicity made them realize my business background was being wasted." "That's wonderful," Katherine started, but Tommy interrupted again. "Mom, remember what you always say about controlling the narrative?" A slow smile spread across Katherine's face. She pressed the intercom. "Sarah, get the PR team back in here and call the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. It's time they heard the real story." Later that evening, after strategy sessions and press releases, they sat by Tommy's river model. Jack had added tiny LED lights to mark the rescue spot, powered by the circuit board he and Tommy had built together. "Think it'll work?" he asked Katherine. "Telling our story our way, with Tommy doing the children's hospital interviews." She squeezed his hand. "They can't fight the truth, especially when it comes with a happy ending." "About that ending," Jack cleared his throat. "My new salary. I can finally clear the construction debt, start fresh. Jack Morrison, if you're about to be noble and step away for our own good, I should warn you that Tommy and I have contingency plans." "Actually," he smiled, "I was going to ask if that dog offer is still open. My apartment doesn't allow pets, so I might need a new place to live." Tommy's whoop of joy echoed through the mansion, drowning out the clicks of cameras from beyond the gates. Inside their sanctuary, protected by love and truth and the strength they'd found together, the headlines didn't matter anymore. The resignation letter sat unsigned on Jack's desk at the hardware store. After 2 weeks of relentless media coverage, Harrison had played his final card, a leaked email suggesting Katherine had arranged the accident at the river for publicity. The implications made Jack's blood boil, that Tommy's near death had been staged, that their entire relationship was built on manipulation. His phone lit up with Katherine's face, a candid shot Tommy had taken of her laughing by the river. Model. He let it go to voicemail. The 20th call today. Jack. Mike appeared in the doorway of the small office. Channel 5's doing a piece on the truth behind the Wells romance. They're interviewing Harrison. Thanks for the warning. You know it's bull, right? All of it? Jack stared at the resignation letter. Sometimes the truth doesn't matter. Mike, sometimes you have to protect the people you love by walking away. The store's breakroom television was already tuned to the interview. Harrison Wells sat in Wells Technologies' executive boardroom, the picture of concerned family member. Katherine's been through so much, he was saying. Tommy's condition, Michael's death. She's vulnerable. And Mr. Morrison, while undoubtedly brave that day at the river, has a history of financial troubles. Draw your own conclusions. Jack's phone buzzed again. This time it was Tommy. Mom's crying. She won't come out of her study. Please come home. Home. When had the Wells estate become home? The interview continued. Wells Technologies' stock has dropped 15 points since this relationship became public. Our shareholders are concerned about Mrs. Wells's judgment. As head of the board, I have a responsibility. Jack switched off the TV. His new district supervisor position suddenly felt like what it was, Harrison's trap. Take the promotion. Prove the fortune hunter accusations right. Refuse it. Lose. The ability to support himself independently. He looked at the resignation letter again. Quitting would devastate Tommy, break Katherine's heart. Staying would give Harrison more ammunition to damage Wells Technologies, the company Katherine had built into her son's legacy. The store's front door chimed. Jack heard the familiar whir of Tommy's wheelchair before he saw him. You can't hide from us, Tommy announced, wheeling into the office. Sarah stood behind him, looking apologetic. He insisted, she explained, quite forcefully. I learned negotiation from Mom, Tommy said proudly. Then his face fell. Who's crying because of stupid Harrison and his stupid lies? She needs you, Jack. Tommy, Jack gestured at the TV. They're hurting your mom's company. Because of me. No. Because of Harrison. Mom says he's been trying to take over since before I was born. Tommy's chin set in a familiar, stubborn line. You're letting him win. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Tommy pulled out his tablet, opening a financial news site. Wells Technologies' stock dropped because shareholders are scared. But look at the children's hospital donations since Mom told our story. Up 300%. People believe in real things, Jack, not Harrison's lies. Jack studied the numbers. The hospital's expansion project was fully funded now, with additional wings planned, all because people believed in their story. The board meets tomorrow, Tommy continued. Harrison's trying to force Mom out. She won't fight him if you're gone. She'll give up everything she built. Is that what you want? When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. I just needed a dad brave enough to keep up. The word hung in the air between them. Dad. Not hero. Not rescuer. Dad. Jack's phone lit up again with Katherine's face. This time he answered, I'm sorry, they both said at once. Don't resign, Katherine said quickly. Please, Harrison leaked those emails because he's desperate. The major shareholders are backing me, not him. He knows he's losing. The publicity is changing. Her voice strengthened. Tommy's hospital interviews went viral. People are sharing their own stories of love after loss, of found families. Harrison can't fight that narrative. Speaking of narratives, Tommy interrupted, grabbing Jack's phone. Mom, Jack's getting a dog with his next paycheck. We need to renovate the East Wing for a proper dog room. Jack heard Katherine's laugh, the first real one in days. The East Wing, Planning to move some other things there too? Well, Jack's apartment is too small for all his tools, and my river model needs a proper workshop. Jack reached for the resignation letter, but instead of signing it, he ripped it in half, then quarters, then confetti. "Tommy says you're crying," he said into the phone. "Was," Katherine corrected. "Not anymore." "Good. Because I think our son just decided to renovate your house." The happiness in her sudden intake of breath told him everything. Harrison, the media, the stock prices, none of it mattered. This was worth fighting for. The morning of the board meeting, Tommy wheeled himself into the kitchen, clutching a large cardboard tube. Katherine was already there, reviewing documents with Sarah, while Jack made breakfast, a routine that had become natural over the past weeks. "I need to show you something," Tommy announced. "Both of you." He unrolled a set of blueprints across the kitchen island, scattering Katherine's papers. The drawings were professional grade, clearly done on a computer, but with handwritten notes in Tommy's distinctive scrawl. "Is that," Jack leaned closer, "the East Wing renovation?" "I've been working with Mom's architect. Look," Tommy pointed to detailed sketches. "A workshop for our projects, a proper space for the river model, and see this part. Heated floors for the dog we're getting." Katherine set down her coffee. "Tommy, the board meeting is exactly why I'm showing you this." Tommy's face was serious. "Harrison wants the board to think we're just some publicity stunt. But real families make plans. They build things together." Jack and Katherine exchanged looks over Tommy's head. Their son had outdone himself. "There's more." Tommy pulled up a presentation on his tablet. "I'm coming to the board meeting." "Absolutely not," Katherine started, but Tommy held up his hand, a gesture so like his mother's that Jack had to hide a smile. "The bylaws say any Wells family member can address the board. I checked with Sarah." He nodded to the assistant, who looked studiously innocent. "They want to talk about the future of Wells Technologies? Fine. I am the future." The presentation was professional, filled with graphs showing the positive publicity from their story, the surge in children's hospital donations, and, most importantly, the recent uptick in Wells Technologies' stock price following Tommy's media appearances. "The public likes us," Tommy explained. "Not just our story, but what we're doing with it. The new Children's Hospital Wing, the disability access initiatives Mom started. It's good business." Katherine's eyes filled with tears. "When did you input all this together?" "I had help." Tommy grinned at Sarah. "And Jack's been teaching me about project planning, like he used to do in construction." Jack studied the blueprints again. The workshop layout was exactly how he would have designed it, down to the tool storage system. "You remembered everything I said about efficient workspace flow?" "Of course." Tommy's voice softened. "I remember everything you teach me, Dad." The word still hit Jack like a wave of warmth every time he heard it. Katherine slipped her hand into his, squeezing gently. "The board meets in 2 hours, Tommy continued. "Harrison thinks he's fighting Mom. He's not ready to fight all of us." Katherine touched the blueprints, tracing the family space Tommy had designed. "Harrison will say I'm letting emotions cloud my business judgment." "No," Tommy said firmly. "You're letting our family strengthen the business. There's a difference." Jack looked at his son, this amazing boy who'd nearly slipped away from them in the river's current, now fighting to keep them together with the same determination he'd shown in surviving all his health challenges. "Your mother and I need to discuss this," he said carefully. Tommy's face fell, but Katherine surprised them both. "No," she said. "No more discussions. No more weighing consequences. Tommy's right. We're a family. It's time we acted like one." She pulled her phone, calling Sarah over. "Move my pre-board meetings. I need 2 hours to review a presentation with my son. And call facilities. The East Wing renovation starts next week." Tommy whooped, his wheelchair spinning in an excited circle. Jack caught it before it could crash into the island. "One condition," Jack said, trying to sound stern despite his smile. "The dog waits until after the renovation." "Deal." Tommy was already pulling up more slides on his tablet. "I've been practicing my speech. Want to hear it?" As Tommy launched into his presentation, Jack watched Katherine's face. The worry lines around her eyes had smoothed out, replaced by determination. She caught him looking and mouthed, "Thank you. Not for the rescue anymore, but for staying, for believing in them, for helping their son grow into someone strong enough to fight for his family." Outside the kitchen windows, the morning sun sparkled on the river. The same force that had once threatened to tear them apart now flowed peaceful and strong, like the love that had brought them together. Tommy's voice carried on, laying out his plan to save everything they'd built, his words full of the same unstoppable confidence that had kept him surviving and thriving against all odds. Harrison wouldn't know what hit him. The Wells Technologies boardroom fell silent as Tommy wheeled himself to the head of the table. Katherine and Jack stood behind him, a united front before the dozen board members. Harrison's face had gone pale at their entrance. "Members of the new board," Tommy began, his voice clear and strong. "I'm Thomas Wells, Jr., heir to Wells Technologies and son of Katherine Wells, and Jack Morrison." He paused, letting that sink in. "Today, I'm here to talk about the future." Sarah dimmed the lights as Tommy's presentation appeared on the massive screen. The first slide showed the Children's Hospital donation numbers, contrasted with Wells Technologies' stock performance. "You're worried about the company's image. Look at these trends." Tommy gestured to the rising graphs. "Since our family's story went public, charitable donations have skyrocketed. And yes, our stock dipped, but it's already recovering. Why? Because the public believes in real things." Harrison cleared his throat. "Tommy, while this is very impressive, the board needs to consider—" "I'm not finished, Uncle Harrison." Tommy's tone was pure Katherine. "Mom taught me to always bring solutions, not just point out problems. So here's mine." The next slide showed blueprints, not of the East Wing renovation, but of something much bigger. Jack leaned forward, recognizing elements of his old construction projects. Wells Technologies has focused on software, on virtual solutions. But what if we built something real? Tommy clicked to renderings of an advanced rehabilitation center, a place where technology meets physical therapy, where kids like me can get stronger using tools we design and build. Mom's already secured the land by the river. Katherine touched her son's shoulder, remembering his midnight confession. "I want to help other kids fight back like I do." "Mr. Morrison's construction experience," Harrison started, but Tommy cut him off again. "Dad's experience," he corrected firmly. "His experience in both construction and business recovery makes him uniquely qualified to oversee this project. The same determination that helped him pay off his debts instead of declaring bankruptcy. That's exactly what Wells Technologies' values stand for." Jack felt Katherine's hand slip into his, squeezing gently. "But more importantly," Tommy continued, his voice softening, "he taught me something Mom's been trying to tell this board for years. Success isn't just about profits. It's about making a difference." He pulled up a final slide, the photo from the fundraiser of the three of them together, happy and complete. "You're not voting on a relationship today. You're voting on what kind of company we want to be. One that builds walls or one that builds bridges." Tommy looked each board member in the eye. "I nearly died in that river. But what I found there, what we all found, was a second chance. I'm asking you to take one too." The silence that followed was broken by slow applause. It started with Sarah at the back of the room, spread to the younger board members, then built until even Harrison's closest allies were joining in. Katherine stepped forward. "I move to approve the Rehabilitation Center project with a complete review of company charitable initiatives." "Seconded," said the oldest board member, dabbing at her eyes. "And might I suggest we also review Harrison's position as board chair?" Harrison stood, straightening his tie. "Katherine, you can't possibly—" "Actually, she can." Tommy pulled out one last document. "Mom owns controlling shares, and as of last week, Dad's construction company is officially debt-free. Which means he's free to accept my gift of shares from my trust fund, all completely legal, since he's now my legal guardian too." "Right, Sarah." Sarah nodded, handing out copies of the paperwork she'd helped Tommy prepare. "Welcome to the Family business, Harrison, Tommy said with a smile that was pure Jack. We'll be making some changes around here. The vote was quick and decisive. Harrison stormed out before it was finished, his resignation letter already being drafted by Sarah. As the board members filed out, many stopping to congratulate them, Jack knelt beside Tommy's wheelchair. Legal guardian? Mom had the papers drawn up last week. Surprise? Tommy grinned. The East Wing renovation is still happening though, right? Because I already picked out the dog. Katherine laughed, the sound bright and free. I think after that presentation, you could convince the board to approve a whole kennel. Outside the boardroom windows, the river flowed strong and sure, carrying winter towards spring. Like their love, Jack thought, it had started with a moment of crisis, but had grown into something unstoppable, something that could reshape the very landscape it touched. Come on, he said, taking the handles of Tommy's wheelchair. I think this calls for ice cream. Before dinner, Katherine raised an eyebrow. Dad's right, Tommy declared. We're celebrating, and I have more renovation. Plans to show you both. As they headed out together, their laughter echoing down the corporate hallways, Jack caught their reflection in the polished windows. No longer three separate people brought together by chance, but a family forged by love and choice and the courage to build something new from the pieces life had given them. 6 months later, Jack stood in the newly renovated East Wing, watching Tommy demonstrate the latest addition to his river model. A working hydroelectric dam complete with tiny LED-lit turbines. The workshop smelled of fresh wood and possibility. Tools hanging in the exact configuration he'd once dreamed of for his construction company. And see, Dad? Tommy adjusted a miniature sluice gate. When the current hits this point, it generates actual power. A cold nose nudged Jack's hand. Max, the golden retriever they'd adopted last month, wanted attention. The dog had been Tommy's choice. Because he's got a heart condition too, and everyone said he couldn't make it. Just like me. Very impressive, buddy. Jack ruffled both, Tommy's hair and Max's fur. Think we could scale this up for the rehabilitation center? Already working on it. Tommy's eyes sparkled. Mom says if the prototype works, we can include it in the therapy pool design. The sound of heels on hardwood announced Katherine's arrival. She'd started working from home more often, converting part of the East Wing into a satellite office. Jack suspected it had less to do with convenience and more with wanting to be near her boys. All three of them, counting Max, the contractors. Need your approval on the center's foundation plans, she said, kissing Jack's cheek. Something about the Riverside support structure? I'll head over. He'd been hands-on with the Rehabilitation Center project, determined to make Tommy's vision reality. His old construction expertise combined with Katherine's business acumen had proved an unbeatable combination. After lunch, Katherine insisted. Tommy's physical therapist says the new water resistance exercises are showing real progress. We're celebrating. Tommy beamed. I can move my legs against the current now. Soon I'll be swimming like Dad. Whoa there, Michael Phelps. Jack kept his tone light, but his heart swelled. Tommy's doctors were amazed by his progress, attributing it to the innovative therapy programs they were developing, one step at a time. Speaking of steps, Katherine produced a thick envelope. The first round of applications for the center's pilot program came in. Want to help review them? Tommy wheeled to his desk, an adaptive workspace he and Jack had designed together. Did you get my shortlist? The kids I met at the hospital? Right on top, sweetheart. They worked through lunch, the three of them plus Max, sorting applications and refining plans. Jack watched his family in the sunlight streaming through the workshop windows, Katherine's reading glasses slipping down her nose as she made notes, Tommy's face intent as he advocated for potential candidates, Max's head resting protectively on Tommy's feet. The media frenzy had died down, replaced by occasional human interest stories about the rehabilitation center's progress. Harrison had taken a position with a competitor, but his attempts to undermine them had fizzled in the face of Wells Technology's surging popularity. Turns out, as Tommy had predicted, People really did believe in real things. "Dad," Tommy's voice pulled Jack from his thoughts. "Can we show them the surprise now?" Katherine looked up. "What surprise?" Jack nodded, and Tommy triggered a switch. On his river model, the entire display lit up, revealing a perfect miniature of their planned rehabilitation center integrated into the riverside landscape. Tiny figures dotted the grounds, children in wheelchairs, families, therapists, all crafted with Tommy's careful attention to detail. But the centerpiece was a bronze statue in the entrance plaza. Even in miniature, the figures were unmistakable. A man diving into stylized waves to rescue a child, while a woman reached out from the shore. "It's us," Tommy said softly, "where everything began." Katherine's hand found Jack's, her fingers trembling slightly. "When did you two do all this?" "Been working on it for weeks," Jack admitted. "Tommy designed it, I just helped with the engineering." "The board approved it yesterday," Tommy added. "Sarah says they cried." Katherine traced the tiny statue with her finger. "It's perfect." "Almost perfect," Tommy corrected. He pointed to an empty spot beside the model. "That's where the wedding pavilion will go. You know, once you guys finally set a date." Jack laughed. "Subtle, buddy. I learned from the best." Tommy's grin was mischievous. "So, spring wedding by the river?" Katherine leaned into Jack's side, her voice soft. "Well, we do have a pretty good track record with that river." Outside their window, the real Mississippi flowed peaceful and strong, its current carrying them all toward whatever adventure waited downstream. But here in their workshop, in the home and family they'd built together, Jack knew they'd already found their happy ending. 1 year later, the spring sun warmed the riverside garden, where chairs had been arranged in neat rows. Tommy sat in his wheelchair at the front, Max lying faithfully beside him, both of them dressed in matching bow ties. The rehabilitation center rose behind them, its modern architecture blending seamlessly with the natural landscape, just as Tommy had envisioned. "Ready, best man?" Jack adjusted his son's tie, trying to control his own nerves. "Been ready." Tommy grinned. "The rings are safe, my speech is memorized, and I've got 3 backup USB drives of the slideshow. Did you know Mom's been crying? Happy tears all morning, like mother, like son," Sarah commented, passing by with an armful of flowers. "You cried through the center's opening ceremony last month." "Those were manly tears of pride," Tommy protested. "Right, Dad?" Jack remembered that day clearly, watching Tommy cut the ribbon, surrounded by the center's first group of young patients. His son's speech about second chances and found family had left everyone in tears, including Harrison, who'd shown up unexpectedly and left with a new perspective on what really mattered. The wedding music began, and Jack took his place under the flower-covered arch. The guests, a mix of corporate executives, hardware store regulars, hospital staff, and children from the center, turned to watch Katherine appear. She was radiant in a simple white dress, carrying a bouquet of river lilies. But it was her smile that took Jack's breath away. The same smile he'd fallen in love with over hospital coffee cups and workshop blueprints. "Hi," she whispered when she reached him. "Hi yourself," he whispered back. The ceremony was everything they'd wanted. Simple, honest, focused on family. Tommy's speech had the perfect mix of humor and heart, including a detailed analysis of how the river's current, that winter morning, had been statistically unlikely, proving that some things were simply meant to be. "And now," Tommy concluded, "I'd like to unveil something special." At his signal, a cloth was pulled away from the garden's centerpiece, a collection of river rocks arranged around Jack's grandfather's pocket watch, permanently set to 5:47 m. A small plaque read, "Time stops when you find what matters most." "The rocks are from where Dad jumped in," Tommy explained to the sniffling guests. "Mom and I collected them last summer. And the watch, well, you all know that story." Later, during the reception, Jack found Katherine by Tommy's river model, which had been moved outside for the occasion. She was studying the tiny figures around the miniature rehabilitation center. "Tommy added something new," she said, pointing. to a wedding scene in the garden, complete with a wheelchair-bound best man and a golden retriever. That kid thinks of everything. Jack wrapped his arms around her waist. Have I mentioned how beautiful you are, Mrs. Morrison Wells? Once or twice, Mr. Morrison Wells. She leaned back against him. Tommy wants to expand the center, add a research wing for adaptive technology. Of course he does, Jack chuckled. Did he show you the preliminary designs yet? This morning, between my hair and makeup. Katherine turned in his arms. He's really thriving, isn't he? The doctors can't believe his progress. Love is good medicine. Jack nodded toward where Tommy was demonstrating the model's water flow system to a group of fascinated children from the center. Speaking of which, ready for the honeymoon? Tommy's got it all planned. Sarah's staying here, Max is protecting the house, and he's got video chats scheduled every evening to update us on his projects. He gets that organizing streak from you, and that determination to help others from you. A commotion drew their attention. Tommy had activated the model's lighting system, creating a miniature sunset over the tiny river. The children gasped in delight as the scene transformed. "Mom! Dad!" Tommy called. "Come see what I added!" They walked hand in hand to join their son, their steps in perfect sync. The river flowed beside them, its current gentle in the spring warmth. 1 year ago, its frozen waters had nearly torn them apart. Instead, it had given them everything. Look! Tommy pointed to a new detail in the model. 3 sets of footprints preserved in tiny bronze along the riverbank. 2 large pairs and 1 set of wheelchair tracks leading home together. Jack squeezed Katherine's hand, watching the sunset over both the model and the real river beyond. Some people spent their whole lives searching for purpose. He'd found his the moment he dove into those icy waters. Not just to save a child, but to save himself, to find the family he never knew he needed. The current had carried them here, to this perfect moment, and would carry them on to whatever adventure waited downstream. Together,